I think that children who were in our year 4-5 class last year benefited from that. And that's because there are a number of children in that class who have autism. And some of those children had some anxiety around coming to school as well. So I think that was very beneficial for the whole class to be involved in the work that we did, and the work that happened with investing in children as well.
So, I was just about to say, so you identified that 4-5 cohort as a group that were particularly at risk of being anxious about school because of the number of neurodivergent children, the number of children that were kind of already showing some early signs. So were they the young people that were trained as peer mentors?
Those were the children who were trained, that class were the class who were trained as peer mentors, and I mean, and I think some of those children did a really good job in terms of their understanding of and their inclusion of their peers and their friends, and understanding some of their behaviours and supporting them. So that class is now, most of those children, particularly the year 5s, obviously are in the year 6 class now. And we still have some children in that cohort with a little bit of anxiety around coming to school, but they are an awful lot better at being able to regulate and support each other and help each other as well.
A feeling that lots of the girls who weren't necessarily on the spectrum yet were suffering with anxiety around school. So that was quite a big focus, particularly with the year 6 pupils that were getting ready for transition. We kind of wanted to just get some strategies in place before that big transition to secondary school. And then children that had experienced trauma. Children now are able to just self-regulate. You can see in the class if there's a child that's having a little bit of a wobble or that's coming on the morning and is wobbling slightly, they just take themselves off into the quiet area with their box and they self-regulate, and then once they come back in the classroom, it's like they've just completely self-regulated their own anxiety, which is great. Children are much more open to talk, we've found, which is great. They're open about their feelings and they can really identify their feelings, which I think was something they struggled to do before. They kind of just said, I feel a bit meh. Whereas now they'll say, I've got a year 6 at the moment, they'll say, I feel this and it's because of this.
Wow.
And they're able to, and then we can say to them, well, what will help? What would you like us to do? And they could even then identify how we can help, which is great. Especially when they go to secondary school. We're trying to make sure that those children, in this small rural primary school, there's lots of support. But once these children go to secondary school, it's all about giving them the toolkit to support themselves.
We've had some real positive impacts made on individual children who were part of the pilot. So a number of the children were having difficulties coming in, so those transitions on a morning, and they made a huge impact on those. So children were coming in, a lot more positive, ready for the day. It also impacted on individual strategies for children as well. We had children who were a lot more regulated across the day, who were able to join in more social situations, joining in with conversations over lunch times as well as in play times. That was observed by staff.
By supporting some of the autistic differences, we were able to reduce anxiety in social situations and support kind of inclusion and reduce anxiety across the day.
Yes, definitely.
So in terms of policy, we've implemented a senior mental health lead, and they run and deliver and develop interventions for children with anxiety or autism or children with any additional needs. We've adopted the zones of regulation. So there's a group that runs each week around the zones of regulation, which is having a massive impact on those children who need to regulate and who are struggling with their emotions. The boxes of fidgets, etc., that's really, really helped. Just giving those children the time to just know that if they're struggling in class, they can just take 2 minutes out and come straight back in. And that's, even I think just knowing that's there has kind of helped, just having that back in the background of their mind that if I need anything, I can just quickly go and nip out. We've done like personalised action plans for each child, and it's about identifying what works for each child, and being really open with the children and them saying, and this works, or I'm not too keen on the bubble blowing technique, it doesn't really help me, that sort of thing. A worry box, we've introduced a worry box in each class as well as in the main school, so that children, a key thing that came out of it was that sometimes the children worried about upsetting their teacher if it was something to do with something in class. So we've introduced a worry box in the whole school, and they can address it to any member of staff that they like. Obviously we're in a smaller setting here, so we know the children pretty well, and they can choose which member of staff, and they've got time allocated to discuss that, so it's then implemented on. And
wow, that really considers pupil voice, doesn't it? Like
definitely.
Letting the child think about which adult they are most comfortable to have possibly a difficult conversation with. So they then would get an allocated slot with an adult of their choice to kind of just talk things out.
Just talk. And that's something that the children have really, really loved, just knowing that they have somebody to talk to if they need to, but there's always time to talk about any sort of worry. And we've introduced something called like a learning log. So every Friday the children write about their week, about like the general week, about what they've enjoyed, what they've learned, and then they have like space for either a worry or just something they want to tell me or the other teachers. And it could be anything, so like home life, something in school, something they found tricky in maths, it could be anything. But we found that really helps for those children that don't necessarily normally share their worries.
We've set up a kind of a mental health wellbeing group in school, and I have some children in the school who are trained as mental health ambassadors now, and they are supporting other children by signposting them to the adults in school who can provide the support for them. So if you think about the whole school provision, as well as that sort of universal zones of regulation stuff that we do across the whole of the school, we then have got some groups identified, some groups of children for small group work. And we have some children who are identified at the top of the pyramid for individualised, more specialist support work if they need that, to help them overcome anxieties. So that's been really helpful, and obviously that's fed into our kind of mental health model for the school as well.
So it impacted across all levels, really. So we've done a lot of change to our behaviour policy that we've really been working on since we finished with the pilot, just in a lot of the terms that we use and some of our practices. So it's a lot about thinking time, reset. There's a lot of strategies and what children are actually doing once if they need that time away. So we've bought a lot of resources, just rather than them being in time out, we've actually got something purposeful for them to do to try and help more with that regulation. So it has had quite a big impact across the whole school.
So am I right in thinking that soft landings are now kind of something that happens every morning for all children?
Yes, that's something that we brought in so that all children, they can come in from 10 to 9 and they come straight into reset activities. A lot can have happened before they've come into school, and at least they know that the first thing that they can do is something that they enjoy, that they achieve well at, and that really starts, their day off much better.
The training that we did with you in January, beginning of this year, almost a year ago now, I think that was really powerful for staff, and in some respects for some staff it was a little bit of a refresher, it was a little bit of a reminder, but it's kind of highlighted this for staff so that when they're working with children, you can hear conversations where staff are now saying, I wonder if that's what's driving the behaviour, I wonder if. So that some of those individualised packages that we put in place, that's helped us if you like, do early intervention. So we're kind of catching kids earlier with those sorts of provision that's put in place before they get to that point where actually the anxiety, they've tipped over the edge and they really find it hard to get into school in the first place.
So that curiosity is kicking in at a much earlier stage, and anything that can be done to make the pupil more comfortable and to interpret that their responses is done earlier. That's fantastic.
Well, it was great to be able to have whole school training, as well as team training and individual training and with one-to-one staff. It definitely had a big impact on staff confidence. We've always had children who've got high level needs and a huge variety of needs, but certainly that level of need had really increased, I think particularly since coming back from lockdown. So we had a lot more children with a lot higher level of need. I think that can be a lot more challenging to deal with. And if you're not having those instant successes, it can feel like what you're doing is not the right thing. So I think having, being able to work with yourselves really helped with that confidence, because it wasn't just a whole staff meeting and then leaving. It was actually being in the classrooms, working consistently with members of staff.
Yeah, I would say work with yourselves, work with your other colleagues in your team to build staff understanding, and staff and the capacity of staff to think differently, about these children, and to think about the behaviour and why that behaviour is there, so that you understand what's driving the behaviour, and then you can start thinking about the things that you can put in place that then take away those barriers that the child has and relieves the anxiety. And I think you're dead right when you touched on relationships. It's not about this is our behaviour policy and it's a zero tolerance behaviour policy, our way or the highway, because that doesn't work for these sorts of children. You've got to have that flexibility to be able to understand the behaviours that the child has and what's driving that behaviour, so that you can change and make adaptations.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, that reframing is really important, isn't it? And thinking about, what skills doesn't this child have and how can I help them learn? What barriers are there? How can we remove them? Because we know generally our young people want to do well and they want to be in school, and how can we make that as easy and as comfortable as possible for them?
It's been excellent. It's been invaluable, really. All of these different things that we've introduced have been down to the work that you guys have done. And as a whole school, we feel like the children are just much more open. It's a happier place. Children are able to recognise that they can have these little things that they might need, and it doesn't make them any different. It's just normal to feel like you're on a bit of a roller coaster some days. And parents have really, really enjoyed it. They keep having really good feedback and saying, like, thank you for all this additional stuff that you're doing. And it doesn't take any time either. It's not like these things are impacting the children's learning and day-to-day routines. It's just little things, that the little snippets that they need, that all children need, but in particular these children that we've identified.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, haven't you? Little things make such a big difference.